15 golden age stars who lost fortunes overnight in the most shocking ways. Hollywood's forgotten dark side. The glittering lights of Hollywood's golden age cast a blinding glow that still captivates us today. Behind that brilliant facade lurked devastating financial collapses that left some of cinema's greatest legends destitute, desperate, and literally dime penniless. Hollywood created this myth of endless wealth and glamour, explained a former studio accountant who worked with MGM's biggest stars. But the system was designed to create stars, use them up, and discard them, often leaving them with nothing but memories of a lifestyle they could no longer afford. The truth reveals a pattern so consistent, it's almost formulaic. Young talent rises to unimaginable heights, earns astronomical sums, and then through mismanagement, studio exploitation, addiction, health crisis, or simple bad luck loses everything virtually overnight. These weren't just financial setbacks. Noted a Hollywood historian, these were catastrophic collapses that left legitimate icons pawning their Academy Awards, facing eviction from modest apartments, and in some cases unable to afford their own funeral expenses. What makes these stories particularly heartbreaking is the contrast between the public's perception and the private reality. While audiences continued watching these beloved stars, imagining them living in luxury, the harsh truth was often dramatically different. Tonight, we're revealing the 15 most shocking financial collapses in Hollywood's golden age. The iconic performers who went from unimaginable wealth to desperate poverty, often in the span of just months or a few short years. The fallen stars. Music one Judy Garland, America's sweetheart left homeless and desperate. Judy Garland wasn't just a star. She was an American institution. From The Wizard of Oz to her legendary concerts at Carnegie Hall, Garland's talent earned her millions in an era when $1 million represented unimaginable wealth. By the time she died in 1969 at just 47 years old, Garland was not only broke, she was deeply in debt, had been evicted multiple times, and had been reduced to pawning personal items just to secure a place to sleep. Judy earned what would be hundreds of millions in today's money, explained the financial historian. And GM alone paid her $400,000 during her teenage years, equivalent to about $7.5 million now. Yet, by the mid-1960s, the IRS had seized nearly everything she owned, claiming she owed more than $500,000 in back taxes, equivalent to over $4 million today. The tax authority had attached liens to everything she owned and was taking 80% of her concert earnings. She was literally evicted from hotels and apartments multiple times in her final years, revealed a former assistant. There were nights when Judy Garland, the woman whose voice had defined American entertainment for decades, didn't know where she would sleep. One night, I found her pawning a gold compact that Frank Sinatra had given her. Remembered a close friend. She was in tears, but she needed the $100 to pay for her hotel room. This was a woman who once earned $10,000 a week. Perhaps most heartbreaking was Garland's awareness of the cruel irony. Judy once told me, "Millions of people go to sleep every night with my voice in their head, but I might not have a pillow for mine," recalled a musician who worked with her in her final years. When Garland died in 1969, her estate was approximately $4 million in debt to the IRS, equivalent to over $30 million today. The financial security that should have come from her extraordinary talent had vanished completely, leaving behind only the immortal performances that continue to generate revenue for corporations to this day. You give me $15,000. 2. Mickey Rooney. From highest paid star to $500 in the bank, Mickey Rooney's career was the stuff of Hollywood legend. Beginning as a child actor in silent films, he rose to become MGM's biggest star and the #1 box office draw in America from 1939 to 1941. At his peak, Rooney earned $150,000 per film, equivalent to about $2.7 million today. Yet, in a twist that shocked even hardened Hollywood insiders, This iconic performer would find himself testifying before Congress in his 90s, describing how elder abuse and financial exploitation had reduced him to having just $500 in the bank, despite a career spanning over 80 years. Mickey earned more than $12 million before he was 40 years old, and that was in 1940s dollars, explained the film historian. Adjusted for inflation, we're talking about earnings that would equal well over $200 million today. The roots of Rooney's financial disaster stretch back to his earliest days as a child star. Under California law at that time, only 15% of a child actor's earnings had to be set aside in trust until they reached adulthood. Mickey's mother and stepfather essentially treated his income as their own, revealed a biographer. By the time he gained control of his finances as an adult, much of what should have been saved was already gone. Rooney's adult financial struggles continued through bad investments, gambling debts, and most significantly, his 8 marriages and subsequent alimony and child support payments. But the most shocking chapter came in his final years when he became a victim of elder abuse at the hands of family members. According to court documents and Rooney's own congressional testimony, his stepson and the stepson's wife took control of his finances, stole his money, and isolated him from friends and family. In 2011, at age 90, Rooney testified before a Senate committee on elder abuse. "I felt trapped, scared, used, and frustrated," Rooney told the committee. "But above all, I felt helpless." When asked about his finances, Rooney made the shocking revelation that despite being one of Hollywood's longest-working actors, he had approximately $500 to his name. When Rooney died in 2014 at age 93, his estate was valued at just $18,000, an almost incomprehensibly small sum for a performer whose films had generated billions in today's dollars. The man who had once been the world's highest-paid entertainer couldn't even afford his own funeral expenses. Come here. 3. Bela Lugosi. From Dracula's castle to destitution. Bela Lugosi's portrayal of Count Dracula in the 1931 Universal Pictures classic made him an international icon. At his peak, Lugosi commanded $3,000 per week, equivalent to over $58,000 weekly today, and lived in a magnificent Tudor mansion in Beverly Hills. Yet, by the time of his death in 1956, Lugosi was so destitute that he was buried in one of his Dracula capes. Not as a theatrical flourish, but because his family couldn't afford a proper burial suit. Lugosi's financial destruction stemmed from tip-casting, morphine addiction, and poor business decisions. After Dracula, producers struggled to see him as anything other than a horror villain, severely limiting his casting opportunities. Meanwhile, Lugosi developed a serious addiction to morphine following treatment for painful sciatica. He was initially prescribed morphine for legitimate medical reasons, noted a biographer. But the addiction took hold quickly. By the mid-1940s, he was spending a significant portion of his increasingly limited income on feeding this dependency. As roles became scarce, Lugosi's financial situation deteriorated rapidly. He sold his Beverly Hills mansion, and his custom automobiles were replaced by public transportation. There's documented evidence that Lugosi was so desperate for work in the 1950s that he would accept literally any role, no matter how demeaning or poorly paid, a film historian explained. He appeared in Ed Wood's notoriously awful Glenn or Glenda for what amounted to pocket change. In 1955, Lugosi voluntarily committed himself to the state hospital for drug addiction treatment. The admission paperwork listed him as indigent. Official recognition that the once wealthy actor was now essentially penniless. When he entered the hospital, his entire worldly possessions fit into a single small suitcase, revealed a hospital administrator. That included his Dracula cape, which by that point was one of the few valuable things he still owned. When Lugosi died in 1956, his bank account contained less than $1,000. His widow faced a heartbreaking reality that she couldn't afford proper burial clothes for her husband. The solution came from using one of the Dracula capes he had kept from his touring days. It wasn't intended as a publicity stunt, clarified a family friend. It was a practical decision based on financial necessity. The cape was literally the most suitable thing they had available because they couldn't afford to purchase a burial suit. The final cruel irony came decades after Lugosi's death, when the character he created became one of the most merchandised horror icons in history, generating billions in revenue, none of which benefited the actor who died in poverty or his descendants. He happy my whole life. You telling me good thing I went to the Conjure Man last night. Landy 4. Dorothy Dandridge. Hollywood's first black superstar died penniless. Dorothy Dandridge broke Hollywood's color barrier as the first African-American woman nominated for a Best Actress Academy Award for Carmen Jones in 1954. At her peak, she commanded $75,000 per film, equivalent to over $750,000 today, and performed at prestigious venues like the Waldorf Astoria for $10,000 a week. Yet, when she died suddenly in 1965 at just 42 years old, Dandridge was not only broke, she was deeply in debt, had lost her home, and according to multiple biographers, had virtually nothing to her name. Dorothy's financial destruction wasn't just about bad luck, explained a cultural historian. It was about a system fundamentally stacked against her as both a woman and an African American in mid-century Hollywood. Despite her Oscar nomination and international